Hi, and welcome to Decoding AQ, helping you to learn the tools, mindsets, and actions to thrive in an ever-changing world. Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Decoding AQ. With me today, I'm joined by Martyn Redstone. He is the founder of PeopleBots and BotJobs, and they're helping recruitment and people leaders navigate the world of conversational and generative AI. A visionary at the intersection of technology and human interaction, Martyn, with a rich background, started in telecommunications, then recruitment technology, and a profound love for chatbots and all things conversational AI. And so he's here to share how these technologies and maybe a few other things are shaping the recruitment industry. He passionately believes that harnessing the power of AI to create a more efficient, equitable, and enjoyable, that'd be cool, wouldn't it, recruitment process. So stay tuned as we explore the edges of the tech today and how it's transforming our connections with the world around us. So welcome to the show, Martyn.
Hey, thanks, Ross. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I'm interested, why don't we start off with what is really exciting you right now? What's a project you're working on or something you're researching that's getting you really excited?
That's a really good question. There's so much going on. I mean, it's actually ridiculous how much is going on in the world of AI right now. And anybody that tries to keep up with it probably has more of a headache than I do right now. But I think what's exciting me is as we see these kind of pockets of technology opening up everywhere. So we've got, generative AI that's been really exciting over the last 12 months. And you see it above me there. Oh my God, my screen's mirrored. I've got no idea where it is. But, you've got VR, you've got blockchain, you've got all these kind of technologies that are kind of sprouting up everywhere. I think what's exciting me more is how we bring those all together and start thinking about a really kind of holistic technological environment that takes the best of everything. And in my world in recruitment, what that also means is what's happening outside of recruitment, because we can't keep ourselves in a silo. What's happening in the world of retail, of insurance, of sports, of all these different things that are going on and how they're using technology, and how can we bring that into our world within recruitment and HR in order to make best use of that knowledge transfer as well.
It's one of the challenges of a modern age, right, is that we have an abundance of data, of information, of opportunity. And the real challenge is, how do we filter? How do we converge? How do we distill? So whilst all of these have amazing promise and amazing little pockets in little corners of the world or corners of industries, to make it relevant, to make it real, to deal with a opportunity or a challenge in a particular sector with new eyes. And I think, what's fascinating, we read these stories and just the pace of everything that right now it's exciting and it's the worst it'll ever be right now.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's both, exciting and scary. So, I mean, you started your working career like many as an employee. I mentioned about telecoms, Carphone Warehouse, Orange. Then you transitioned into recruitment, spent a good chunk of time at Reed, stint at G4S, then becoming a consultant and founder. So just walk me through a little bit of some of those transitions from, okay, I'm in telecoms, then into recruitment, and then into sort of consulting and founder. What were some of the triggers for you that those transitions showed up?
That's a really good question. Look, I've always loved just using my hands, playing with, when I was a kid, I loved Meccano, building things and tearing it apart and fixing it and rebuilding it and what have you. So I was always going to go into something that was probably technical, to say the least. My favorite subjects at school were like electronics and and the geeky stuff, the physics in science and stuff like that. So I've always been a fan of kind of how things work and why things do what they do. So when I was at school, I finished my kind of up to 16 education GCSEs, went on to do my kind of post 16 education with A levels, and just got really bored, in all honesty. And it's terrible kind of advertisement for education, but there's other opportunities out there, and for me that was an apprenticeship. So I did an apprenticeship in mobile telecommunications engineering. That was with Orange. Spent several years there working on the mobile telecoms network. But actually, alongside that love of kind of engineering and working on, really kind of quite technical problems, I'm quite an ambitious person, probably is probably the best way of putting it, and was looking around where I was working at the time, and there were people who were, I was early 20s. There were people that were twice my age, maybe even three times my age, who were coming to the end of their career, who were doing exactly the same job that I was doing then. And I really couldn't imagine doing that same job day in, day out for the rest of my career. So my uncle, who is a computer scientist, I was talking to him about my quandary, and he said, well, why don't you go and do a degree? It's something to do. It's 3 years. It give you another qualification, and it doesn't have to be academic. It can be technical, and gives you 3 years to kind of reassess what you want to do in your career. Great idea. So went and long story short, went and applied for a degree. Didn't end up doing that degree because they closed the course down a week before I was about to start. Ended up doing computer science, funnily enough, and did 3 years computer science degree at the University of Salford, and finished that. But what I had to put myself through it as a mature student. None of it was after the time of kind of free education and what have you. So I put myself through it by working part-time for Reed as a part-time recruitment consultant and evening and weekend resourcer. And what that meant was going through databases of people and making sure that their contact details are up to date, booking them into shifts in kind of temporary healthcare roles that might be available for them. So kind of doing the kind of grunt work around the recruitment piece. Did that part-time for a couple of years while I was at university. When I was ready to leave, finish university, Reed had a job for me and carried on working there for several years, as you said. And that really gave me an opportunity to really dive deep into the recruitment process. And I did various jobs there. Various jobs sounds like so old-fashioned. Various roles there, which went from being a recruiter all the way through to working within the kind of corporate innovation team, the solution design team for the outsourcing business, and really just love putting together solutions, but realized that a lot of the time the process was broken and it could be fixed using technology. So I was really quite passionate about kind of fixing things with technology once again, and then went over to work for G4S because I was offered a fantastic opportunity there to go into a business that wasn't working brilliantly. They owned a policing recruitment business. It wasn't performing brilliantly. One of my old bosses from Reed had gone over there to manage that business. He invited me to come over and be his innovation guy, basically. So I went over there. We worked brilliantly together. It was a great kind of 18 months or so. And unfortunately, kind of post-Olympics, G4S were in a lot of kind of governance problems. And so this is the London 2012 Olympics for those that are listening far into the future. And they unfortunately shut that part of the business down. So I was made redundant and really thought to myself, well, I could go and find another job, or I could go out on my own and do what I love doing, which is help people solve problems. And it's the perfect role, consulting. That's perfect. That's exactly what consultants should be doing. They should be diving in. They should be, really kind of deep diving into where the challenges are, where the problems are, and trying to really just release those bottlenecks. And for me, that's recruitment processes and releasing those bottlenecks using technology. Fast forward a few years to about 6 or so years ago, I started getting involved in chatbot technology within the realm of recruitment, and haven't looked back since. I was one of the first people that started working on that technology in the industry, one of the first people talking about it, and I've been doing that for the last 6 or so years now. And what that means is working with recruitment businesses to both recruitment businesses and internal hiring teams to see if we can improve their process using conversational technology. So that could be chatbots, could be voice bots, could be automated messaging, anything involved with having a conversation, basically. So that's kind of what brought me to where I am today.
It's interesting, people often talk about you can only connect the dots looking backwards. right? And looking forward, anything's at play. It could be an opportunity, the things that, the change that we choose or the change that chooses us, and how we then adapt and respond to all of those things is fascinating. So you talked about your story of, who influences you, what is it that you do, and we uncover and discover what excites us, right?
Yeah.
And that interplay between humans and technology. How can I solve problems? Where can technology deal with efficiencies, deal with equity or access, or make it more enjoyable in some of those things? And a lot of people that recruit, myself, I've been an entrepreneur 25 years. In my previous business, I employed about 100 people. And recruitment, it's tough. And often you're doing it and you don't know how to do it. You figure out as you go along, right? And as companies scale and you have people who are involved in that process of acquisition of talent, and it's a difficult thing because humans are complex, right? And we don't wear a label on our forehead saying I'm going to be your worst nightmare or your best nightmare, your dream come true. And I might operate in a certain way in where I've been in my environment, and my environment past was, a nice forest. I come into this new company and realize that actually it's a swamp, or it's a desert, or it's a different environment. And so we're very complex in ourselves. And then when we go to teams and organizations, can we play well together? And so I'm fascinated at which parts during that employee life cycle, from the acquisition to then the onboarding to then actually employee mobility, where do you see the key opportunities in recruitment, right from finding in the beginning or recruiting internally, or different ways that technology or chatbots can play core roles in that? Where did it start? Where is it now? And where might it go in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question, and really, really good points, actually. I think that, and that's quite central to how I do what I do. So not only is recruitment hard, because like you said, you've got so many different factors into playing into it, you've also got the factor of human capacity. And this is the bit that I really kind of tend to focus in quite a lot with people that I work with, is understanding that as humans, we're not bad at what we do. And there's this kind of, there's this, horrible kind of tendency to speak quite badly of recruiters because it's a poor recruitment process. And if it's a poor recruitment process and a poor experience for the job seeker or for the candidate, it must be all the recruiter's fault. Terrible recruiter, terrible, worst recruiter ever, and unfortunately, that's quite unfair. Most of the time, recruiters are very passionate about helping people find the best opportunity for them. The challenge they have is that they're people, and they work 9 to 5, and they sleep 8 hours a night, and they have a family, and they have all these things. They're not there for you 24/7, and that's where we think about where we can use technology. So when we start looking at the recruitment process and the number of interactions, the number of conversations, the volumes, we also look at things like power matrix. So, when does the recruiter have the power? When does the candidate have the power? All those kind of things that come into it. And we actually say, well, do you know what? Let's say right at the very beginning of the recruitment process, you advertise a role. You can go on LinkedIn and have a look now. You look for a job on LinkedIn. Most of the time, every role has over 100 applications. And imagine you're a recruiter working on 20 roles at a time, and every single one of those has 200 applications. That's just a ridiculous amount of applications you have to get through. So people then complain about ghosting. I never heard back, and I sent an email to the recruiter, or I linked in with them, and I never hear back. Well, of course you never hear back. These people are just at capacity. And so we have to think about how we can alleviate that capacity. And that's where we have that conversation matrix. So the conversation piece is that any one time, if all a recruiter is doing is picking up the phone and screening out applications, saying to them, are you living in the right place? Is this the role you're looking for? Is this the right salary? Do you have the right kind of skills and experience? And a quick 8-9 minute phone call just to check those off. A recruiter, if that's all they're doing every day, can do 53 a day. So working on the number of jobs that they're working on with the number of applications coming in, it's literally impossible. It's 265 calls a week. That's it. And it's impossible because they do other things as well. So when we put a chatbot in place at that point in time, a few things happen. A, the recruiter is relieved of all that mundanity in their role. So that means they can get on with the more important stuff, the human kind of focused relationships. The candidate actually gets a response and gets to talk to a representative of the organization. So their application has gone somewhere. They feel uplifted. So that's a positive on the employee experience and a positive on the candidate experience. Everyone gets spoken to. And what that also means is that the recruiter gets to find out who actually is the right person to take forward to the next stage. Because sometimes it's just luck, because a recruiter goes, right, I've got 10 minutes to look at this now. Right, okay, I've got my 6 that I can take through. Whereas now, leave a chatbot to it. I've got my top 10%. That's great. People who think they're the best applicant for the role, who never get an opportunity, finally get an opportunity. So there's some great kind of positives that happen there. And actually what we see on the metrics is an increase in that employee experience, because recruiters aren't being bogged down, and an increase in candidate experience and candidate satisfaction as well. So that's just one part of the recruitment process that can be absolutely improved.
And it's often an increase in diversity as well, because you're getting to see more volume. So that initial hopper in the filter of being able to engage with more. And we've seen, various companies come into these kinds of areas, from higher view to different ones that are trying to deal with how do you take that vast volume of people and be able to filter to the ones that might be right. And whether it's a chatbot, whether it's a video experience, and through that process, you're trying to figure out a match, a fit, a likelihood of future performance, and make that prediction. I think one of the challenges that we're going to be seeing moving forwards is, what if what we're matching for shifts so quickly, right? So we have a role, we have a task, somebody will do a job, role, job definition. This is what it is. Use ChatGPT to help us do that. They get their role, get their definition. This is the unicorn I'm looking for. And lo and behold, in 3 months, 6 months of have found them, they're in the role. The shape, color, size, tasks, role, and whatever that they wanted for that unicorn has changed and evolved. And I think previously, where we had, when we were off recording, you were talking about, people around you, father, different mentors, about how long people worked in particular roles, and they didn't change very much. Now we're seeing the roles change. We're seeing where, this transition that a lot of people thought about, software was an enabler for us to do tasks. Well, now software is completing tasks. And we're seeing this massive transition of, well, what are the skills that we need to recruit for? What does a good match look like? What does a good role definition even look like? And I think there's still a old school of, it needs to do this criterion, it needs to meet this, needs to meet this, and then realize, wow, we have now embedded an issue in our business for our talent lifecycle, because at the front part, we're looking at it still in an old lens, but the reality of the day-to-day business is so transitional, so changing, of reskilling, upskilling, all of those things. How might that first bit evolve or be different, knowing that the roles or tasks that people are doing are going to shift very quickly on, annual basis, 6-month basis, 18-month basis of what it is? How might we redefine or reimagine that first part before we even go into the next phases of it? I'm curious as your thoughts on that, Martyn.
Yeah, so you're quite right. The world of work has changed so incredibly, and it's quite funny because we see so many people now that badmouth, what they call job hoppers, people who've got CVs that show them working 6 months here, 18 months there, 2 years there, 12 months there. And I'm sorry to say, that's the world that we live in now, and if you're a manager who thinks that's a negative, then you need to rethink how you look at the world, because we're no longer in a world of our parents and our grandparents where they worked in the same place for 20, 30, 40 years and left with a golden clock when they retired, because it doesn't happen anymore. The only way that people can continue learning, can continue developing, and can continue growing in their career is to hop around, because we are the sum of our experiences ultimately, and people have to recognize that. So I think it's a really interesting time in the world of work. I think you're right. AI is making an impact on that. We saw recently that Klarna last week announced that they implemented an OpenAI powered chatbot. It's now doing in their customer service. It's now doing the role of 700 people. They said the quiet stuff out loud, as far as I'm concerned, and that quiet stuff is AI is replacing, tasks which are adding up to people, unfortunately. And that's the key part to think about, is that everyone's worried about job displacement, and you're right, there is going to be job displacement caused by AI, but it's because it's good at doing tasks. It can't do your entire job. So we have to now reimagine the way that we do things. And I think what's going to happen with that is we're going to move to a world where there's going to be a lot more gig work rather than permanent employment, because we're going to realize that actually we need this kind of skill for X amount of time, rather than we need a software dev to come in and work for us full time for the next 2, 3, 4 years. We're going to need a software dev to work on this. We know that they're going to be powered by Copilot, so we know that we can get two for the price of one. And we need them to work on this challenge for the next 6 months. And so I think that that's what we're going to see more and more, is the kind of not displacement of jobs, but displacement of permanent work to move towards gig employment. I mean, ultimately, permanent work is no more secure than gig employment nowadays anyway. People realize that you're only as secure as your notice period. So I think that's one of the things we're going to see. I think the second thing we're going to see is a massive shift in the types of jobs that we do. And I was saying just the other week, my kids, they're 6, 8 years old, another 10 or so years in education before they go into the world of work. Not even them, but absolutely the people that are moving into the world of work now, as they start moving through their career from early career through to experienced career and into kind of their first managerial role. Their first managerial role, they may not be managing people, they may be managing AI agents. And we've got to bear that in mind, that not only is the world of work changing from the type of work we're doing, but the type of role and the type of things that we're doing is absolutely changing. And that's the really exciting bit about AI, is not the fact that it's going to displace work, because ultimately it will displace it, but it's going to create something a lot more exciting, which is this augmentation of the workforce. And that's going to create new opportunities. That's going to create absolutely new opportunities, new jobs, and new really exciting things. And that's why the government of Singapore have been really, really sensible in their approach to this, because they're now thinking about the kind of 40 plus people who probably are threatened by this more than anyone else, because they're kind of not digitally native, to say the least. I mean, I'm kind of in that pond of people, but let's just say kind of I'm not the majority. But they're now giving every over 40 year old the opportunity to go back to university and learn something new that's going to help them in their career, learn about technology, learn about AI, become a software developer, become a data scientist, all those things that we still need. Absolutely.
It's interesting, isn't it, about at various points in history, what do we need? And we mobilize human beings to do that, whether that was farming, whether that's working in factories, whether that's now knowledge workers, healthcare practitioners. And there's various types and roles that currently maybe some people can't even imagine anything other than a human doing it. Oh, healthcare, nursing, we need that. Well, actually, with Tesla's humanoid robots, we've got 2 or 3 other players that are coming in. That how might that be reimagined, from what our predisposition of what we think is a very human role? I want to be cared for by another human when I'm ill, when I'm not well, when I want a doctor, I want the surgeon. Well, now technology has the ability to outperform humans in so many areas, right? So whether this is in coding and programming, everybody can code now, can program, if you can speak a normal language, right? We can use these various large language models to be able to do it. We then have access to what previously was, a PhD medical person, a PhD in this. We can get that for a few bucks a day. We will be able to hire something like a Tesla robot very soon to do your, gardening, dishwashing, folding, cooking, all of these things. at dollars a day, similar to
Yeah.
renting a car. You could rent one of these things. Yes, it will go into the factories first, but then potentially into homes. How does that evolve our very human nature of what our careers are and a career portfolio that added to another, as you mentioned before, technologies converging? What about other things that are converging? Our longevity. When we start living beyond 100, 120, what does our careers look like then? What does the definition of retirement created to be able to make room in the workforce for new people to come in? What does that look like when people are healthy, productive, cognitively capable in their 90s, in their, hundreds? How are they
Yeah.
contributing to society, and what might that look like? That it's very hard to imagine the future. It's a bit like, I just watched um some of the prequels to Yellowstone. So Yellowstone, Kevin Costner in, and a prequel set in 1883, and then another one 1923. And it was fascinating, the Harrison Ford one in 1923, and it was the onset of, cars are starting to come, electricity's coming to various areas, refrigeration,
Yeah.
plumbing into homes, all of these things. And they're like, oh, well, I don't want this, radio, where's the parking for my horse?
Yeah.
It's been taken over a car. So where's my role? It's been taken over with AI, and I'm managing
Mm.
AI. I'm managing AI agents. We have a AI avatar on the board, who's helping us make decisions, not just provide data. And that transition for many, like you and I think we share similar. It's exciting. For others, this is incredibly fearful, and we're going down the wrong track, and we shouldn't be embracing this. And it's going to get out of control. And what will it then mean to be human? And so I think there's some real, we'll be figuring it out as we go along, but we've got to figure it out as we go along, where the stakes are high and the timescale of figuring out is short.
Yes.
And I'm just fascinated as to, what we're setting in motion now, of how we shift our mindsets, how we shift, how quickly we can unlearn, how quickly we can make room for new ways of thinking. And a lot of that comes from who we spend time with, who influences us,
Mm.
our mentors. And I'm curious, who've been some mentors in your world, in your life, and who might be the mentors for your 6-year-old, your 7-year-old in the future? What might that look like? So perhaps speak a little bit to some of that influence of other people and mentorship.
Yeah. I think that's it's a really, really good question. I haven't ever really sought out mentors. I've never tended to formalize that kind of piece. I tend to be, and actually, I'm smiling because I was going to say I tend to be quite a sponge when it comes to things. But actually, in my kind of earlier days when I was working at Reed, one of my managers there, a lady called Leslie Weir, she was absolutely, a mentor to me. And she just gave, when I was kind of first starting my early kind of managerial career, she was there for me, and she really kind of helped push me forward in my career at Reed. And one of the first things she said to me was, be a sponge, just absorb everything you can do from the people around you. And that's kind of always been a bit of a philosophy of mine in life, is that I always try to learn, and I always try and listen and absorb what people are saying, and then take that away from my own processing, I suppose. Um, I'm so yeah. So I've never really sought out mentors. I've always I yeah. I'm just trying to think really. I
Could also be people of influence, people who've
yeah. No, I was
influenced the
I
way you
was
think, than
yeah.
a structured, I've got this coach or this mentor. But people that dance in and around our lives, often at the early years, it's our parents, right? And
Yeah,
then friends of our
absolutely.
parents. And then as we get older, it's people we work with, people we like, that influence the way we think. And I'm just curious,
Absolutely.
who's influenced really some of your views? You mentioned, a person in a role, be a sponge, and that resonated at the time and has
Mm.
had a domino effect on you. Who else has been influential in the way and shaping your thinking?
I've well, I've yeah, if we go back to kind of the early years, obviously parents, absolutely. I was saying offline that my dad was a semi-pro mountaineer, and was kind of heavily involved in mountain rescue in Wales, actually North Wales in the UK. And his mentor throughout his kind of formative years, to say the least, was a guy who squadron leader David Datner, who was the first kind of chief inspector of RAF Mountain Rescue here in the UK back in the kind of 40s and 50s, after World War II. He was an incredible person, and the impact that he had on my dad absolutely trickled through to me as well. And he was a really kind of old-fashioned RAF officer. He was captured by the enemy, in World War II. He was tortured, and as he said, if I had anything to say, I would have told him. It was bloody painful. So it's that kind of stiff upper lip, but also very driven, very almost stubborn, but in a positive way. That I suppose was an early part of my makeup. I'm not much of a quitter at all, and I'll never back down from a challenge, and so that's a big part of who I am, and that's probably from that early years influence. I'd say and that's certainly been the case from a career perspective, because I've always been very, very driven to keep pushing forward in my career, and that all comes from that same influence, I'd say. I suppose from a professional perspective, I've certainly in what I do now from a conversational AI perspective, I've surrounded myself with a great kind of community of people. The world of conversational AI is still quite new, even though the first chatbot was in 1966. Eliza in 1966, the first kind of known chatbot. So it's been around for a while, this kind of technology, but the profession around it is quite a new one. And so several years ago, I surrounded myself with a really nice community of people from all over the world, from here in the UK, from the US, from the Middle East, from Israel, all over the place. And I suppose now, I take a lot of influence in my thought process around in terms of the actual work that I do from those people. And the lovely thing is that nobody's ever in 100% agreement, and I love that. I love that kind of that creates a much more thrilling community of people, because you get better conversation, more informed dialogue, and that's really, really important. And I think when people start surrounding themselves with a bit of an echo chamber, that for me is really problematic. And we're seeing that more and more in the world, I think, especially in the world now that we have social media algorithms, the TikToks and Instagrams and Twitter or X of the world, which you can partake in. But the way that the algorithms work there is that they feed you stuff that you're going to be interested in, and so you're going to be suffering from this kind of echo chamber effect. And that's something that I'm always very reticent of, making sure that I'm breaking out of that echo chamber and listening to the viewpoints of people who I may not agree with.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because it's uncomfortable, to have something that is a opposing view, a different view to your own, and we often move away from that discomfort, and we end up, like you say, in an echo chamber or mirrored reflection of ourselves. And that's one of the challenges in recruitment, to come back to that, right? Is that, are we creating a mirror reflection of what has worked before, or what looks like us, or how it's performed in the past, to actually, are we getting good at the discourse? Are we getting good at being able to debate and have different opposing views to the solution, to the thoughts? And I think technology can play a really important role, and especially those who are responsible in building them, to push us more to those extremes where we might not get so pissed off, with another person. Oh, Martyn, you've pissed me off because you've got a different view to me. I won't talk to you again. I'm out. Wag some fingers and slam a door. To actually, what if within those conversational AIs, we had the opportunity to expand people's thoughts by you now have to do a 10 minutes or a 5-minute conversation with an opposing view just to give you some more skin of thought, some more opposing flexibility of your cognitive processing. Wouldn't that be, interesting? Painful, but I think we would all benefit from that. From, okay, it's now acting in the opposite, why this is a
Yeah.
bad idea or why this is a good idea, and we can learn to debate better. And maybe technology can help us in that, where in humans it gets personal. We shy away from it. And outside university debates, we don't do it. We then call it an argument. And we are seeing the biggest amount of polarization in society that we've ever seen. We've got this year the largest volume of political change across all the countries in the world to vote in new leadership, and our ability to allow discord, allow different conversations, different viewpoints come in without fight, without war, without friction, and being able to allow those. Maybe technology can play a part in that. And I wonder how in the recruitment process we can find those odd misshapen, that a match doesn't look like a match of old. A match might be the square peg in the round hole. That might be what we need right now. And again, that's a mindset shift. Wondered what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, the world is crazy right now, and I think that I think it's really interesting. I won't go into politics because that's always a dangerous area to start running into, but as a keen observer, shall we say, I find it very, very interesting that there are different things happening in the world that are very similar, but having different responses to them. So what we're seeing in a lot of countries over the last several years has been a pushback on the status quo, and people being open to bringing in a candidate for change as a political leader. We've seen it recently in South America, with Argentina and Brazil in particular, where they have voted in new presidents who have been very much just totally pushing back on what has been something established for decades upon decades upon decades. And that's been seen as a positive because those countries are, politically, economically in strife and all those kind of things. And then we see what's happened in the US, and, what has been seen as a kind of anti-status quo candidate in Trump is looked at very, very, negatively because it's Donald Trump. And so so I find it very interesting when we look at the world of change and the world of accepting change, and where our criteria is, whether it's an acceptable change or not. And that's very poignant because a couple of weeks ago I was in Amsterdam, and I was at the Anne Frank house, and obviously learning a lot more about kind of the impact on what is looked at on society as an acceptable change in leadership, but actually historically a terrible idea. So it's yeah. So I think that technology can be a driver for change. I think one of the lovely things, if I bring it back to recruitment, is that when we are whizzing through those applications and those CVs and those resumes, we are very much at risk of unconscious bias. No amount of training is ever going to remove that from us. We're humans. And so we're always going to have the unconscious bias, and we're going to see something we don't like, and we're going to see something we do like, and we're just going to naturally filter that way. We're using technology, we're not going to do that. We're going to look at the ones and zeros. We're going to say, okay, we're looking for this skill set, this experience, in this geography, potentially, et cetera, and let's bring that together. And we're going to get the best of the bunch. And what that means is that actually that can create a really, really positive change in the workplace, because we might have been recruiting based on referrals or based on, based on a heuristic around bias, just all those horrible things. And so that can create some really good things. We've seen some really bad things happen when we implement AI, but that's because ultimately we have to build an algorithm, and algorithms learn off of previous data. So if your previous data is we've only ever hired white male software engineers in their 20s, the algorithm's going to think that's the best way of doing it. So it's up to us as humans to always sense check. And so you were talking earlier about technology can write code for us, it can do law for us, it can, give us medical answers, can do, but we need humans in the process to ensure that the information it's giving us is correct. And it goes back to, I think, a conversation that we were having kind of pre-recording, which is around thought, the power of thought. And I think that this is one of the things that we have to be really, really careful. We're in a really interesting time in the world right now, when it comes to technology, demographics, political change, absolutely everything. It's really explosive if you think about it. We've got certain countries like Japan who are shrinking from a population perspective. So we talk about, as people get older, and they're in the workforce, but actually somewhere like Japan, they're not going to have a workforce in the future because there are less and less babies coming there, and that's being driven by less and less people wanting to get married and get into relationships and all those kind of things. So we probably do need technology, and we're already seeing in Japan this implementation of storefront AI and kiosks and unmanned shops,
Peopleless experiences, whether
Yeah,
that's shops, hospitals,
yeah,
healthcare, all of those things. And
absolutely.
it comes to your point, about the human role in the transition of, okay, we call them co-pilots today. And we might then see a future law where a doctor, it would be illegal to prescribe or do something without a co-pilot AI checking their work, and vice versa, the human
Yes.
checking that work. And checking the work and the authority historically has been by experience and level. So a intern questioning a doctor in the process of what they're doing would be frowned upon, wouldn't be
Yeah.
right, and would be sent out. Whereas it might be just that naivety of asking the silly question that unlocks an opportunity of innovation or of growth. Now, when we hear that from a less authority entity, when we hear that from a technology, from an AI, and in our authority, do we trust it or do we not trust it? If it looks like something I believe already that's coming from it, I'll go, yeah, that's cool, that's great, I like that statistic.
Yeah.
And I'll go and find something that backs up my view and thought anyway. If it's against mine, well, it's not right, it's broken, the algorithm's not right, and we'll push it away. And so I think there will be this transition of, at what point then do we actually have not a human managing us in authority and co-pilot, and we become the co-pilot to the technology, and how that pans out in certain other areas. I know in certain parts I would trust technology more than I would a human in certain parts of my life, of diagnosing, of looking at data in different ways.
Mm.
I would trust technology more. And is that a scary thought? What does that look like for the future of work? And how do we get our heads around some of those things? So I think it's a fascinating time to be alive. I think it's
Mm.
really interesting to push these boundaries at which parts of our life would we welcome or put up the roadblock to it being, oh, I like another human who studied for 7 years, who studied for this, to tell me what's wrong, but they've only consumed that amount and only had that
Yeah.
experience. I'd much rather a broader view without the biases that take in, a GP who did 2 weeks on nutrition, to a specialist in nutrition, to a specialist with AI co-pilot with
Yeah.
this. Wicked. So I think this future of work of these, you mentioned about, job hopping, to career portfolios, to surrounding around a thing, a bit like in the film industry. We have a film, actors, actresses, they, gather around. You then get the script writers, the sets, all
Yeah.
of the costumes. We'll then have Sora involved to do generative stuff. We'll have all of these things involved, and then it disbands, and then it comes around, and it's a series of projects around an aim. And I wonder, inside companies, which are series of projects, and how companies collaborate, the value in the past of the people, of IP, of processes, to becoming more open source, becoming more fluid, becoming more sharing. What is that economy of the future when we can then shift maybe IP from singularly owned to fully available with smart contracts on blockchain that actually expands its reach and impact, rather than creating value by control the secret source?
Yeah.
So all of these transitions of the future of work and how we figure it out, and then the impact on recruitment, is just fascinating. If you could predict, say, just 12 months out, So we've seen massive shift in the last 12 months, right? Of
Yes.
technology, of chatbots, of all of these things. With your experience, with your ecosystem of other people that are involved in that, from Steve Wozniak to this person, what can you best see of the impact of AI and technology, perhaps just 12 months out? What's in the pockets, in the little secret corners that might then be released, that people that are listening, if they're managing people, if they're involved in recruitment, if they're dealing with innovation, they need to build into their roadmap of foresight? Give us some tips, some hints, some thoughts about what's coming down the pike. And I don't know that anyone can think beyond 12 months right now, because it's
I mean,
what's out there that we need
I
to be aware
don't.
of.
I think 12 months is a very, very long time in the world of AI innovation right now. I mean, God, look at what's happened over the last 12 months. We've gone from just about being able to create a picture to Sora, and which is 60 pictures a second basically. So it's yeah. Well, look, I think one of the most pressing things that we're going to be focused on, I think, as a recruitment industry over the next 12 months is we talk a lot about building AI into our processes, about how can we use AI to be more efficient as recruiters and provide a better experience. Let's put the shoe on the other foot. Absolutely, we've got job seekers, we've got candidates who are starting to use AI, and that's AI to help create a more bespoke CV for the role they're applying for, AI to create a cover letter for a role that they're applying for, AI to apply for 500 jobs all at the same time if they need to. So we're looking at the rise of the AI powered candidate. And I think that what that means is that we're going to have to shift the way that we assess applications from CV and cover letter, because there's no value in those anymore, to something a bit different. So we're certainly going to be, the next 12 months, we're going to be seeing a shift to not skills-based hiring per se, but kind of assessment first application. So rather than going, here's your application, here's your CV, here's your cover letter, let's have a look at that, let's invite you through to a screening, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to kind of skip that bit, I think. And we're just going to get to the nitty gritty of, let's do a bit of a job skills assessment on you, and make sure you're the right person, you are who you say you are, you've got the right skills for the job. And actually what that means, yet again, is that we're going to diversify the pipeline, because you might have, not to sound like Liam Neeson, but you might have a particular set of skills that you don't realize are good for that job that you're applying for. So being able to assess your skills and then see actually you're quite a nice match for this job, again, it's a nice thing because it diversifies the pipeline. So I think that's what we're going to see over the next 12 months is everyone's going to get a bit, we're kind of stuck in this kind of individual experimentation phase of AI right now, especially of generative AI. And there's some things that we have to do as an industry to get over that, and that includes looking out for regulation and what have you. So while we're in that bit of a process, we need to be front ending this and thinking about the impact that candidates using AI are going to have on our process.
I think that's such an interesting point you've picked up there, Martyn, in terms of not just the companies adopting AI in their process for recruitment, but candidates doing the same. And a smart candidate using AI to do all of these things to, find their job, do their job, get selected in their job, is a really interesting, opportunity and idea for those people looking to get involved in a different way, become seen. And I think there's this going to be a resurgence of the experience and human connection, that because we can, the choice of should we. And it links back to some of these things around return to office, hybrid working, remote working. Just because we can, does that fill my soul with joy? Is it how I want to work? Because I can do it. I can sit in my little recording studio at the bottom of my garden and do these things. Or would it be just better to hang out over a coffee with somebody and I can hug them, I can, be around their energy, feel their frequency in a way that gives me joy, if that's what I choose that day. And so I think we'll see this, meandering of the pendulum shift between, yes, we're embracing all this technology, we can do all these things, we can recruit anybody from anywhere in the world to do anything we want to do. And we'll see, unicorn companies of one. Sam Altman's got the, internal little WhatsApp group of when will that happen? When will it be not just a one-person company valued at $1 billion, when it's a no-person company, that it's just been created and exists, and it's not run by anybody. It's run by a piece of software, a piece of technology that off it goes and does these tasks with various agents.
Absolutely.
It'll be fascinating, right? So as we come to the close, because I recognize that we're coming towards the end, one of the questions I ask Martyn at the end of every interview is around curiosity. And it is, when was the last time you did something for the first time, and what was it?
Wow. When was the last time I did something for the first time? Do you know, it's really interesting. I think that I'm only laughing because you realize, actually, just by asking that question, just how many you think that you're full of curiosity, but actually, I'd say, if you want to continue doing things for the first time for a long time, have kids, because absolutely, I think almost every day I have to do something that I would never ever expect in my life that I would ever had to have done, or a dog. Have kids or a dog, because they're both exactly the same. I mean, look, recently my daughter was started losing, my youngest daughter started losing her teeth, and she was getting annoyed with one of them, so I helped her pull a tooth out. It was coming out anyway, so we had some fun and pulled a tooth out. And have I ever pulled a tooth out before? No. So just silly things like that, just absolutely. But what's really interesting, and I turn around and look at it, and this is why I love virtual reality, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, is that immersive technology is incredible, and the amount of experiences that you can have with immersive technology, even though it's not reality, it's virtual reality, is incredible. And I can put that on, and I can go under the sea, I can go to the top of a mountain, I can go to space, I can ride a roller coaster, I can go to some of the best museums in the world. And that has been one of the most life-changing pieces of technology that I have ever purchased. So, and that's the old one, that's the Quest 2. So if there's one recommendation for a piece of technology, go and buy a Quest 3 from Meta and immerse yourself in the world of immersive technology, because it's bloody brilliant, and it really does give you some
different experiences.
Absolutely.
We would tell stories to help people experience new things. We'd write books, we'd create films, we'd create art, poetry, these things. And you talked about helping your daughter pull a tooth for the first time. When we do things, all of these things, we have a mix, right? We have a mix of fear, of trepidation, of will I get it right, will I get it wrong, what's the reward, what's the risk, what's the joy? Where's the fun in these things? And it leads me back to the last chapter in one of my books, which was talking about the Monkey King in Kung Fu, and how in the face of death, can we have play? Can we have fun? And many of us in our careers, in our jobs, in our roles, in our tasks, we feel like we're facing death of an identity, death of something that went on. Can we do that and face it with joy? Can we smile? Can we find an experience that is enriching? And that is a choice. The event itself will be the event itself. And that's a beautiful human piece. So the immersive technologies, virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality, to push our boundaries and increase our muscles of new experience, that then, hey, going under the sea in VR might result in Martyn in a few years' time actually going diving, or doing these different things that for us, we can have an element of safety to explore new things, to then decide, do I like these things? Am I interested by these things? Which is beautiful. Thank you so much. If people want to get in touch, if they're curious about, engaging people bots, bot jobs, how they think about AI in their recruitment process, how do they get in touch with you, Martyn?
Easiest way is LinkedIn. Rather than giving you all websites and everything like that, just find me on LinkedIn, Martyn with a Y, Redstone. I'm the only one out there. And connect with me there. I run a newsletter called Hair, which is ironic because I don't have any, but it stands for AI in HR. Yeah, so find me on LinkedIn, follow me there, and you can subscribe to my LinkedIn newsletter there as well.
Beautiful. Thank you, Martyn. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved hanging out with you, and I hope that everybody listening has enjoyed and come away with a few nuggets and change of thought.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's been great. Thanks.
Do you have the level of adaptability to survive and thrive the rapid changes ahead? Has your resilience got more comeback than a yo-yo? Do you have the ability to unlearn in order to reskill, upskill and break through? Find out today and uncover your adaptability profile and score, your AQ. Visit AQai.io to gain your personalized report across 15 scientifically validated dimensions of adaptability. For a limited time, enter code PODCAST65 for a complimentary AQME assessment. AQai, transforming the way people, teams, and organizations navigate change. Thank you for listening to this episode of Decoding AQ. Please make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast directory, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do leave a review and be sure to tune in next time for more insights from our amazing guests.